Today is a great, wonderful, amazing, incredible day, and I'll tell you why. Because it's Sweden Day. 5 ways I'll never be completely Swedish. Without further ado, let's get into this reaction. Let's go.
Hey everybody, today is a very special day because exactly 1 year ago is the day that I became a Swedish citizen. And having lived my entire adult life basically in Sweden.
It's been a year. I remember when he got that. It's been a year already. Wow.
I've been influenced by Swedish culture in a lot of ways. And I would even make an argument that before stepping foot as an adult in Sweden for the first time when I moved here at the age of 22, I already had a very natural proclivity towards the Swedish way of life, whether it was because I lived in Europe as a kid when my family lived in Germany for a year when I was 5 years old. I always felt like my family had very European values. My father, having both of his parents born in Germany, and my mom's side of the family coming from Italy, if you go back a few generations. So I've always felt very European, and I always felt like I very much fit into Sweden when I came here. I've always been a little bit more of an introvert, at least compared to other Americans. I mean, I do have social sides as well, but I just loved the peacefulness and the respect for other people in Sweden. It's a very nice place to live if you want a calm, relaxed lifestyle where people aren't going to bother you so much. And I felt like as someone that likes to take personal responsibility and have a more relaxing lifestyle, I fit in very well in Sweden, and I could understand their culture and their values when moving here. And then of course, spending so much time here, I've just become even more Swedish in the way that I am as a person. And now I can truly say that I'm pretty much a mix culturally in my personality between being American and Swedish. But there are some ways that I just feel like I will never be completely Swedish, regardless of how much time.
That makes sense. Like, it's going to make sense that even though he's been in Sweden so long, even though he has his citizenship, he has his passport, he can speak Swedish, you're never truly going to be that if you haven't, like if you don't go to, wherever you go to school, I always say wherever you go to school is what you are. What you are? Yeah, your nationality. If you go to school in a certain country, that is where you learn the core of who you're going to be, the core of your being. Is when you're in your teenage years and your really developmental years where you're learning how to speak the language, you're learning how to interact, you're learning about the etiquette, you're learning about, socially how you're supposed to interact with people. You learn that when you're a kid, you learn that when you're a teenager. If you go to another country when you're an adult, you've already formed who you are for the most part. So because he went to school in America, he's American. He's learned the ways of America. He can learn the ways of Swedish people, but he'll never truly be fully Swedish. So I get that. But he's done very well. I've watched his journey for quite a few months now, and he's done very, very well to get from just being the American guy in Sweden to learning Swedish, really immersing himself in the culture. Hashtag goals. I've been learning about Sweden for quite some time now, outside of Sweden. I haven't yet stepped foot in Sweden, but I'm so excited to do that. And maybe, I don't know, could, fall in love with Sweden like he has. So, yeah. But you'll never feel fully Swedish because you're not Swedish. You're an American Swede. But he's a Swede, isn't he? Because he's got passports. He is a Swedish national, but yeah. He's an American Swedish national. He's got dual citizenship, so.
I spend here in Sweden, there are some aspects of who I am that I always feel like I will identify a little bit more with my American side. And in this video, I'll discuss some of the differences that I've been thinking about with you guys. This first difference that I'm thinking of, it came to mind because recently my parents from the US came to Sweden to visit me and my girlfriend, and they got to meet my girlfriend's parents for the first time. And this was going to be very interesting because my parents are very American, but also have a lot of European values. As I mentioned, having family roots here in Europe. So it was really interesting because one of the things that I noticed with my parents is that they're really good at making conversations lively and fun. fun. When they meet people here in Sweden, it's just really easy to hold a conversation with them. And I think that's one thing that Americans are very good at socially. Speaking to my girlfriend's parents after my parents went back, they said, wow, your parents were so fun and so easy to hang out with, but they still had these European values. And I think there's something to be said about the social culture in America. It's very easy to talk to Americans, whereas Swedes can be a little bit more reserved, especially when it comes to their personal life or deeper topics when you're first meeting them.
Yeah, like Americans are very good at small talk. It's good, but is it good? It's good, but is it good? No, I just feel like I feel like Americans are very, very good at small talk and sometimes superficial conversations. You know, conversations that are not really deep. They don't really want to get to know you. I mean, this case is different. This is parents meeting, and of course they do want to get to know their in-laws or their parent. You know, that's different. But you know, when you meet an American like out and about, they want to talk to you. Hi, how you doing? Beautiful weather we're having today. Where are you going today? Oh my God. They're very, very forward and very, very want to have a conversation with you. It's very surface level. It's not like they actually do want to know. They probably walk away and forget about the conversation they just had. Whereas I feel like Europeans, especially the Swedes and Nordic countries, and a bit England as well, we might be a bit more standoffish with strangers. And it's not that we're not friendly. We are friendly, but we like to know people's intentions before we like get into a deeper conversation with a conversation. I'm trying to, you know what I mean, right? We don't like superfluous. Is that the word? We don't like conversations that there's no need to have them. That sounds so bad. You don't need to have them, but like you can just be in my presence and it's okay. We don't have to really like talk about anything if we don't have anything to talk about. But Americans like feel like it's almost like they're anxious to speak, that we have to have a conversation about something. So no, we can just be. Do you know what I mean? We can just hang out. And then when we really have something to have a good conversation about and we know each other really well, then we can have that really good conversation and have a good chat. We need to get to know each other first. And I get that. I understand that so much. I really, really do. And actually, some of my best friends, like when I first met them, were very standoffish, like really one-word answers. They weren't very like chatty. And it makes me, and if I like them, it makes me want to work harder to be their friend. And then once they open up, they're the funnest people ever because they're not superficial. Like you actually have to win over that person to have a friendship with them. It's not, we're just a friendship out of convenience. Does that make sense? I know I've gone off on a tangent, but I really feel like if I go to Sweden, like I understand Swedes in that way. Like I don't know why I'm like that, but that's my personality personally. So if that's your personality culturally, I think I'll do well in Sweden. You know, I think I would.
I remember the last time I was in the US and I took a plane flight and sat next to a complete stranger, an older woman, and over the course of a 2-hour flight, she opened up about her entire life story, and I knew everything about her kids, her medical diagnoses, and everything that she was going through. And Americans have this very openness about their personal lives, and I think that's something that I also have, because I think about how open I've been about my personal life with you guys here on YouTube. It's been a glimpse into my life and it's always come very naturally to me. And I think that's maybe part of the American culture that I was raised in. And to add to this social aspect, I've found myself in Sweden oftentimes being a social connector because I'm so open outwardly, just naturally. Even though my personality can be a little bit more introvert at times, I would kind of consider myself an omnivert, someone that can do both. That might not be the word, but if you do know the word, let me know in the comment section.
Introverted extrovert. That's what I call myself.
But I've always had an easy time inviting new people in to things. For example, my girlfriend and I hosted a party several months ago, and she invited all of her friends, and I invited all of my friends. And it seemed like most of her friends, or a big portion of her friend group, they all knew each other. It was sort of like their childhood friend group, or people that have spent a lot of time together. Versus on my side, all the people that I invited, it wasn't from one sort of friend group. It was people from all different groups. I knew this person from the gym.
Yeah, but that's because he's not from Sweden, so he didn't grow up in Sweden, so he doesn't have long-term friends from school, right? That's the explanation in my head. It's because he's only been in Sweden like a few years, so he's gonna have friends from different friendship groups, from the gym, from work, from other places, whereas his girlfriend has a long-term friendship group. That's the reason.
I knew this person from work. I know this person from the language project that I'm working on. I met this person at a bar, and I met this person on Instagram. And everyone came together, and because my friends are all quite international, I would say, in Stockholm, they all just sort of mixed. Whereas I feel like with Swedish gatherings, it'd be less common for someone to invite all different types of friends from all different places that you've met them and have them hang out in a single place.
What do you guys think? Is that true? Let me know if... as a Swede, would you normally not have friends who don't know each other hang out with each other? Let me know. Let me know if his assertion is correct. Let me know in the comment section.
Made me think of one of my friends who grew up in France as a Swedish guy. And when he became older, he moved to Stockholm to rediscover his Swedish roots. And this is one of the most social people I know. So fun to hang out with. You hang out with him and you go to a party and he'll meet everyone. He'll be the life of the party. And I just genuinely love spending time with him and being around him. But he was telling me it was difficult for him to find a party to go to on Midsummer because everyone's Midsummer parties, they would only invite people from their childhood friend group. And that was sort of...
I get that though, because I was asking you guys, where would I go for Midsummers? Is there an event on? Is there something on for Midsummers that I could go to? Because everyone's saying go to Sweden during summer, go to Sweden during Midsummer. And it seemed like there's not many events on that most of the time when it comes to Midsummers, people put on events with their like close family and close friends and friends from school and all that type of stuff. There aren't any like public events for Midsummer, so maybe he's right about that. Let me know if you think he's right or he's wrong. Let me know.
Mind-blowing to me, and I think it goes to show that even for someone super social and outwardly where it's very easy for them to meet people, there is this sort of boundary of like, these are my friends that I grew up with, our childhood friends that go way back, that I went to preschool with or high school with, and we've developed these relationships over a long period of time, and someone that's new coming into the group. Whereas in the US, I don't think that would have made as big of a difference, and I think it would have been much easier for him to actually find a party to go to. The next difference I want to discuss is my views on sort of personal freedoms versus the group collectivism that is oftentimes very prevalent in Sweden. America is a land that is very individualistic, and people pride their ability to make choices for themselves above many other things. We sort of pride ourselves on being the land of the free, even though in reality, most countries that have democracies have freedom in the way that we would define it in America. But in terms of actually personal freedom, I think Americans really value the ability to make decisions for themselves and not follow the sort of group mentality that we oftentimes have in Sweden. Let me give you a few examples to
Group mentality that you often have in Sweden. Be careful here, Stefan. Let's hear what he has to say. Maybe he's got a valid thing he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about, because when I think about Swedes, I haven't been to Sweden clearly, but I've learned a lot, I think, I hope. And Swedes seem to be very independent people. Very independent people, like fiercely independent a lot of the times. So I'm interested to see what he means by this.
Explain a little bit more what I'm talking about. So like in Sweden, we have Systembolaget, or the state-run liquor store. And a lot of Swedes, they really like it and they support it. And I'll admit, Systembolaget is a great run store. But I don't think as many Americans would appreciate the fact that they can only buy their beer and wine from one specific place that's closed on certain days of the week and has certain opening hours. But support for Systembolaget in Sweden is extremely high. Another example could be when it comes...
That's interesting. That is interesting, isn't it? You put your trust in your government to keep alcohol at bay. But you know what? It's because Systembolaget makes a lot of sense. Alcohol is it's poison, really, isn't it? We enjoy it, we love it. Adults, we drink it and we have fun drinking alcohol. I drink alcohol every now and again, but it's not good for us. It's not. We know this. Even though we have fun drinking and we like an alcohol beverage, alcohol's not good. It's just as bad for you as any other substance, drug, or whatever. So to have a little bit of restraint, a little bit of control over something that actually isn't very good in large quantities, I don't think that's a bad thing. There are certain things where relinquishing control isn't a bad thing, and I think alcohol is one of them that I'm like, yeah, like, what's the problem? So yeah, but that doesn't make you not independent. I think it's very much a choice. Like, you have that in place, and I think you, as Swedish people, have the choice. You're choosing to keep that kind of system kind of regulated, so that young people don't get their hands on alcohol easily. Like, I think it's better than what we have in the UK. You can buy alcohol, purchase alcohol in any place that has a license, and I don't think some places are not as good at keeping a tight rein on people purchasing. They're not looking out for people who are alcoholics. They're not looking out for people who are underage. They're not looking at how much these people are drinking. You know?
To politically some people's stance on maternity and paternity leave. For one thing, I think it's great that fathers in Sweden have access and the ability to take paternity leave if they would like.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is sort of a debate in Sweden at the moment is if the fathers should be required and make it mandatory to take a certain number of days for paternity leave. And for the good of society and having equal rights and equal pay between men and women, I can see there are some good arguments there for implementing some mandatory paternity leave days. But in my own sort of political opinions, I really value the ability to make those sort of decisions for yourself or between your family members. I'm quite libertarian in my viewpoints, sort of that everyone should be able to do what they choose and what they think is right for themselves, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. And I don't really...
That is interesting, isn't it? Making it mandatory that you take paternity leave off and maternity leave off. Should you be forced to take a specific amount of time off from work? If you're being paid for that time off work, then I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm all for it. Why not? You need to spend more time with your child. You brought a child into this world. Spend more time with your child. Bond with your child, take some of the responsibility of raising that child off the mother. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that either. I don't know. I get what Stefan's saying though. I do. You know, the choice of saying no, but I don't see those as I don't see it as a bad thing. Let me know in the comment section what you feel.
Really like the idea of a government or a big group of people telling me how I should make decisions in my own life. And I think that might go back to my American cultural roots. In Swedish society, they have this concept called jantelagen, that you're not supposed to stand out or think you're anything special or deviate from the common opinion and belief that everyone has in society. But as an American, I find myself really unafraid to stand out and think differently and do things differently. And I'm not saying this goes for all Swedes, because everyone's different. Everyone has different philosophies and views of the world. But I do find that this group mentality and collectivism is very prevalent in Sweden.
But I think the individualistic kind of nature of Americans can also cause a lot of friction, as we see with the constant protests, the constant, friction between the right and the left. It's turmoil in America, and it's because everyone is very individualistic, and no one can come to a consensus of how things should be run. They can't agree on things. At least in Sweden, you guys have the trust in your government. You have a trust in that collectivism. You have a trust in your society. The reason why we decide, because we do decide to be nationals of a certain country, is because we choose our countries. We choose to be, sometimes where we're born, but if you want to leave and move somewhere else and become a national of another country, there's a lot of countries you can go to where you can be a national of. And the reason why we stay being nationals of our countries because we believe in our country and the policies and the way that the country takes care of us. We have the same ethos, the same culture. We have a collective view of the world and how things should be run. So there should be some trust. Not all trust, but there should be some trust. And I do think in America there are too many people with differing opinions and differing views, some extreme views, some not so extreme views. In fact, extreme views on both right and left. And it's like, there comes the problem is, it is the land of the free, where everyone, whether they have a brain cell in their brain or they don't, has a say in what goes on in society. And I think that causes a lot of problems. So yeah, I hear what he's saying, but I think Americans are encouraged too much to have their own opinion on things, even if they're not qualified to have those opinions, and they're not the best opinions that, you know, benefit society. Does that make sense? I just feel that with Americans, and I understand and I respect that they really, 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 really cherish their freedom there, and, you know, their gun laws there and the right to bear arms and stuff like that. But sometimes that's not the right way to be, because sometimes maybe you're not best qualified to speak on what the country should do and have. I don't know. Does that make sense? I don't know if I made sense there. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Now I want to talk a little bit about taxes, because Sweden is far and away a country that has very high tax rates across many different categories. And the amount of taxes a country collects is closely related to a culture's ideals between individualism and collectivism. If a country is more collectivist, then more people should pay higher taxes and contribute to the common good, versus a more individualistic country where everyone should stand for their own health insurance or paying for school or those types of things. That's going to be more of an individualistic value. If I look at the actual tax rates that I pay in Sweden now versus what I would be paying on a similar salary in the US, the difference is really quite huge. And if I take a valkompassen in Sweden, or basically a quiz that says which way I would vote, my results that I've taken, especially recently, are really leaning towards the blue end of the spectrum, or the more sort of conservative.
Political quiz. Ooh, I want to do this political quiz. I don't know who your political parties are in your country, but it'd be interesting to see mine and where I lean. As you get older, I think your political leaning changes as you get older, and mine has changed. I think when you're younger, I think when you're young, you're very far left. Far left. Most young people are very far left. Very radical in the way that we think about things in societies, because we haven't lived and actually worked and actually, you know, been a part of society yet. And I think as time goes on, I think most people start to shift more to the centre. I have shifted more to the centre, but I don't know where I lean at the moment. I don't even know if I'm centre right, centre left. I'm definitely not far right. Don't worry about that. I'm definitely not right, I don't think. I don't know what I am. I'm very in the middle, because I don't know. I don't really follow politics like that. But it'd be interesting to see where I'm at.
Parties in Sweden that would advocate for less social services and lower taxes, versus the red parties that want to have higher taxes and offer more services. There are some services in Sweden that I really appreciate, like having free healthcare for all. That is pretty amazing. And the fact that college is paid for in many cases, or is at least a lot cheaper than in the US. But there are also a lot of ways that Sweden uses tax money where I just don't feel like it's warranted. And again, I think this goes back to sort of my libertarian mindset of like, okay, let's cover the basics: fire, police, healthcare, make sure that society is running and functioning. But there's a lot of extra benefits and services that I think benefit a lot of people, and you can make arguments for why they're important, but I would just lean towards the side of maybe having less of those services. Whereas in Sweden, the most voted for party, historically, if you look back at the last, 30, 40 years, it is the Social Democrats, a red party that wants to have a strong welfare system in place. And if you look at even further left of that, you have Vänsterpartiet, or the left party in Sweden, and their political views are even further on that left-hand side. And I think for Americans to see their political views, it would be really quite shocking. So I think it makes sense that I gravitate towards the blue end of the Swedish political spectrum, having been born and raised in America, and being in a country that does lean more left than my childhood country where I grew up. It makes sense that I tend to skew a little bit towards the right. One thing I will...
That's interesting. That is interesting. I would love to take a test to see where I'd lean.
I'll say though is that I always try to take in the opinions and news and research from both sides, and politics is actually a topic that I really enjoy discussing with people, even though it can be sort of taboo in a lot of countries culturally. Overall though, I do think it's very interesting to look at the political landscapes of Sweden versus the US and see exactly how they actually differ. I also think it's interesting that I sort of have this very natural hustle instinct of wanting to become the provider in my relationship and wanting to work more and earn more. And I think that is a very American mindset of trying to hustle and work hard and get ahead. The Swedish work-life balance is very nice and people can have a very comfortable, stable lifestyle. But when I think about my goals and what I want for myself, I don't want to live a normal average life. So I'm always hustling to sort of try to get ahead. And I think that this is sort of ingrained and instilled in me culturally. The last difference I want to point out in this video,
I don't think it's that Swedes don't want to be successful and don't want to get ahead. It's just that they don't see themselves as above anyone else, and like it's not mandatory to be that way. I think all Americans are taught like this individualistic kind of way of step on whoever you need to step on to get to wherever you need to be. And that's because in their country, they don't get free healthcare. They don't get free anything. Like they literally have to work for a lot of the basic services that we have in Europe. So for them, it's probably a bit of anxiousness. I think the mental health of Americans is probably quite bad. Like, you're probably anxious day to day, especially if you have a family. Like, I need to provide, I need to get ahead, I need to be the best because I have people to look after, and that's constantly how they feel. So being in Sweden, he's probably like, oh my god, people are actually not like as anxious and worried about, it's a different way of being.
Video has to do with the language, and this is my accent or my Britning. They say that if you move somewhere or you start learning a language after the age of around 13 or 14, it's very difficult to actually pick up that language without an accent. And for me, I feel like I will always have my American accent to some extent when I'm speaking Swedish. With that said, I'm very happy with my Swedish level. I feel like I can communicate easily with people in my day-to-day life in Swedish. If you're trying to learn Swedish, just like I have, you're gonna love our community for
Okay, he's selling his course, which you should definitely check out if you can't speak Swedish. I think all of you guys can. I might do it though. I would support his business for sure, because I've been thinking about learning Swedish. So I would definitely support Stefan because I like him. I like his videos, and I like the way he is. So, and I'm very jealous that he lives in Sweden and he's able to really be on the ground and learn what the differences are between Americans and Swedes. And I think he's realizing that he's very, very American. I wonder if it'll be a lot different for me as a Brit because of the similarities between Sweden and England. They're so closer in like European identity and European way of being. Obviously, we used to be part of the EU. There's just like a shared way of being in Europe, especially Western Europe and Northern Europe, that I feel like the culture shock and even down to learning Swedish, I think, someone from the north of England, even down to learning Swedish, I think I would have less of an accent than he would have speaking Swedish. You'd still hear my accent as an English person, but I think it wouldn't be as harsh. as his American accent when he speaks Swedish, but I can't speak Swedish, but I think that's how it would be. But anyways, guys, this is a good video. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, I will see you very soon.